College-age voters are an essential constituency within the voting arena. To ensure our democracy, college-age voters must recognize their significance and act accordingly. Armed with accurate knowledge of key issues in the 2008 election, college voters, you, have the power to raise your voice and take action. Assumed Republican nominee John McCain presents several key issues that are extremely relevant to constituencies that reside in college towns. Understanding John McCain's stance on drugs and crime may help you decide upon the candidate who is right for you. Maryland was recently named by High Times magazine as having the most active counterculture at a university in the United States. Drugs are clearly an openly debated issue on this campus, and drugs are also an important issue in the upcoming elections. The current leading nominee of the Republican Party, John McCain, has had a steady history of opposition to drugs. John McCain strongly believes that as a whole, we are losing the war on drugs, launched by the federal government in the late 1980s. He has consistently voted in support of stricter penalties for drug offenders and voted to increase spending on prevention and education programs. McCain has said that since President Clinton took office, the federal administration has been AWOL on the issue of drugs. McCain has expressed the most hawkish positions on drug policy. He wants to increase penalties for selling drugs. He supports the death penalty for drug kingpins. He favors tightening security to stop the flow of drugs into the country and wants to restrict availability of methadone for heroin addicts. In addition, he would push for more money and military assistance to drug-supplying nations such as Colombia. McCain highly values our trade relationship with Mexico and believes we should maintain our open borders of trade with an added measure of increased security by scanning incoming cargo to prevent drugs from being smuggled over the borders. He voted in support of congressional bills to purchase and implement such equipment. McCain also argues that Mexican President Felipe Calderón should extradite arrested, convicted, and wanted drug dealers or drug offenders to the United States to be handled in the justice system. In the past, his voting record shows that he supported adding $53 million to the International Narcotics Fund. McCain voted yes in 1999 to a $1 billion increase in the budget for border security to acquire sensing equipment that would detect drugs. The budget also included a plan to increase security on the United States and Canadian border, as well as at maritime ports. Additionally, McCain sponsored the establishment of drug testing standards in the world of Major League sports. In terms of drug abuse prevention and education, McCain would argue that the local and state efforts need to be increased in combination with the initiative of the federal government. McCain adamantly supports increased spending on drug prevention and education programs, which would not be limited to narcotics, but include alcohol as well. He also asserts that the federal government should do more to assist in rehabilitation and recovery from drug abuse by expanding currently federally sponsored programs, but does not support methadone treatment programs for drug addicts, unless the main objective of that program is to eliminate drug addiction completely and follow up with comprehensive drug tests after the completion of the program. John McCain's views on drugs do not deviate from the conservative norm. He expresses opposition to the legalization of marijuana and is a consistent and adamant supporter of the war on drugs. McCain's platform on drugs reflects his conservative sentiment in his support for increasing spending on border control and protection, making laws and penalties for drug offenders more severe, and sponsoring congressional bills for increased spending on drug fighting related efforts. Considering the level of awareness about drug-related issues on this campus, it is important to highlight the Republican presidential nominee, John McCain's platform on drugs and federal drug policies. Crime at the University of Maryland has been a chief issue in this upcoming election as one of the most controversial and significant issues on campus. From aggravated robberies to sexual assaults, the College Park campus has been a breeding place for criminal offenders. This includes the recent instances of hate crimes, including the noose hung outside the New York Cultural Center. John McCain has one of the toughest stances on crime compared to the other candidates of this election. McCain strongly believes in enforcing many of our laws on sentencing and the use of the death penalty. Since 1999, the Republican presidential candidate, John McCain, has supported laws that help to deter hate crimes. McCain has supported the funding of community policing programs and states that these increases should be, quote, implemented with the state and local government commitments. This increase in funding is another way to deter hate crimes, rather than increase the amount of specific hate crime laws. McCain also advocates the use of the FBI to deter hate crimes. McCain states that the FBI is appropriate and effective enough to help stop acts of violence against Americans of various races, genders, and ethnicities. McCain is a strong believer that the First Amendment should not be a shield for hate groups and those groups who conspire to commit acts of hate and violence. A crime on campus can be a terrifying experience, even for those that not only read about these incidents after they have occurred. This is why McCain supports the increase of penalties for crimes committed on school grounds. This also includes imposing harsher penalties for youths that commit violent crimes and prosecuting these youths as adults. This takes account of the multiple assaults and robberies with firearms that continue to plague our campus and its surroundings. McCain has voted yes on mandatory prison terms for crimes that involve firearms. On top of this, John McCain is the co-sponsor of the Sexual Offender Tracking and Identification Act. This act establishes a database for the FBI to track each offender who has been convicted of any sexually violent offense. There have been multiple unpleasant incidents of sexual assault on this campus, and it is our right to know whom these people are and where they reside. This act requires all sexual offenders that are out of prison to register their address, fingerprints, and a current photograph with the FBI to include in a large database. John McCain also has a strong stance on the death penalty, which is defined by his votes on stricter sentencing and the limiting of death penalty appeals. McCain supports the broadened use of the death penalty and believes that this will impose, quote, truth in sentencing for violent criminals. McCain wants to create more federal prisons and wants to establish funding programs for prison inmates to learn vocational and job-related skills. John McCain has a strong position on crime, and this is supported by his history of voting on criminal issues and personal support of increased death penalties and FBI registry of sexual offenders. In 2005, the National Criminal Justice Association created a rating system that determines what the candidate's stance on crime has become. John McCain is rated at 85% by the NCJA, which indicates that his stance is tough on crime. McCain's position on crime is highlighted by votes for deterring hate crimes, increasing death penalties, and exposing sexual offenders. This is the most effective way to keep our campus safe and our students out of harm's reach. Overall, the issues that crime entails are prevalent on college campuses throughout the nation. Therefore, it is imperative to understand the impacts of crime and criminal punishment. John McCain has had a steady history of opposition to drugs.